Hello, everybody. My name is Angela Roy, and I am going to do my presentation, my oral presentation for my senior capstone paper. Um, I have chosen a topic that seems to be very close to me. I've dealt personally with a lot of things with the criminal justice system, with victim advocacy, and that is why I wanted to propose this policy change for victims having the right to um, read their statements and the many myriad problems that comes from that at parole hearings. There seems to be some controversy in this area, and I want to address some of that. Um, in my proposal, I mentioned that so many victims get left behind after the initial trial process. After the trial is done, it seems to be that the victims are kind of thrown off to the side. I mean, we do have plans in place, like, the victim hotline where you can keep track of cases or whatnot that is going on. With your case, I have used that. It's called Movans. Um, but other than that, it seems to be after the legal processing is done and the trial is done, it's like, okay, you're done, you got your justice, and there is still much more to be um, looked at because there is more legal proceedings, such as the offender coming up for parole and you having the right as a victim to come and read your statement, and to not only have your statement but to also have statements from psychologists, such as if it's for a child, and they've been in an advocacy center. um, maybe even have police officers that if it was a domestic violence type of situation, have the officer come in and testify about what they saw. Um, Mental health professionals should be able to be there for you, so they can let the parole board know uh, exactly what you have been going through with your mental illness and what's happened with this process. A lot of people end up with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They also end up with anxiety, depression. Um, there's so many different things that can happen, and I think it's very important that a mental health professional comes in and is allowed to come into the parole hearings, because then they can relate what exactly this victim has gone through and what they are still going through. And I think the mental health professional could provide, insight into that for the parole board to hear. Another topic is also, just the educational broad field of everything. There needs to be more education, period, as far down as from starting with the police officers. Police officers need better training for victims, how to understand the victims, how to treat the victims, what to do so they have the victim's trust. Because at that bottom line, if they don't have trust from the police, then there has been multiple studies that have shown that victims will not come forward to the police any longer. They will spread by word of mouth that the police are untrustworthy. That's not what the police officers want. They're there to help. They're there to serve. And I think it's just a lack of knowledge on how to handle the situation. So if we can handle that right there, that's gonna go up the chain and help with things further on. Um, Also, I touched on a web-based tracking system um, for the advocacy, every level of advocacy. I think this web-based tracking system report that I read um, says how important it is to have the system in place. There will be flaws, and those flaws should be taken care of as outlined in the paper, on how I think that should happen. Um, Things such as having a team that will keep track of the system, make sure it's running smoothly, make sure it's not crossing any legal barriers that shouldn't be crossed for the victim or the offender. Um, my main focus is the victim, but I realize that also the offender has rights. We don't want to cross their legal rights either. So there is a fine line balance there. But I do believe that if we have a web-based tracking kind of system in place at every level of the advocacy, from the police up to child advocacy centers to, domestic violence shelters, the advocacy group itself, sorry, I will spit it out, also uh, places like human services. All these places need this information because then they can better help the victim. They can look and see what is going on with the case, what the victim needs at that moment, what they may need in the future. Um, so I think that's very important. Very, very important thing to have. Um, like I said, it would be hard. And with this policy thing, I know you have to start at a local level. It may even start with a petition. Just get a petition, have so many signatures that you are required to be able to go and turn it into your state legislative system. That would be the first step, I would believe, is to go to the state legislative system. Let it see if you can get a policy even looked at that level. After you go through that level, then we will proceed up the legal ladder, so to speak, and we will go towards things such as getting it then to like the next court level until we reach the national level, and maybe the Senate or the Congress will actually hear the proposal for the policy change, look at all the evidence, all the pros and the cons, and they can decide from there whether this policy change will go into effect. And there is no illusions that this would be an easy process by any means. It's definitely would be very time consuming. It would require a lot of patience and perseverance. I mean, if you're really honestly wanting this change to happen, you're going to have to make it happen. You're going to have to make the first step. Somebody's going to have to make the first step. So I'm just going to kind of look over here and make sure that I've kind of touched on everything. Another thing I talked on, and another reason why I think this web-based tracking system is so important, I know we have Mobans, but sometimes there's glitches in that. I've experienced glitches in that. There's a case that I have personally been dealing with for about 10 years now. And when you call the prosecutor, there's nothing there. So I think there needs to be more for victims in that way, to where they can get the answers they need and not have to necessarily be a lawyer to do so. The answer that I got was, well, call the offender's lawyer. And the offender's lawyer is not going to give out any information to the victim. So this is a roadblock. So I really think that this web-based tracking system would help with this, because that way the victim has more rights. And that's the bottom line, is the victim needs more rights. They are a victim. They have been deemed a victim by the court system. So they should be treated as a victim. And I think a lot of the judicial system, especially the parole board, has no idea on how to approach this subject, or how to treat these individuals, or to look at, there has been many cases of people that had got out of domestic violence relationships. The offender went to jail. They got out on a parole hearing. When they got out, they went back and they either horribly murdered or did something horribly wrong to the person that put them in jail. And this is something very real that people, of domestic violence have to live with. And this is very important on why they need, and they need to have their advocates in there to explain the dangers, and the very real dangers, and present the evidence on what the real dangers are in the real world. And use statistical, qualitative evidence. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that